Turn it over right now to Yehuda. What's good with you? I'm just going to sing a selection for y'all.
Check. Kwame Yasharala, Israel. Y'all sound tired. Kwame Yasharala. All praises to the Most High. Let's sing this song real quick and we get on to the message. The song is saying that he keeps doing great things for me. You know, there are times in our lives where situations may seem to depress us and irritate us and frustrate us, but we got to understand that he gives us life. And we still here. We woke up. He didn't have to wake us up. And the song goes, he keeps doing great things for me. Oh, he keeps doing great things for me. If I, and you too, had 10,000 tongues, oh, I praise his name, Yahweh. I praise him with everyone. If I had 10,000 hands, yeah, I'll use them to lift up his name. Oh, I said he keeps doing great things for me. Oh, he keeps doing great things for me. Keeps doing great things for me. Oh, he keeps right on doing great things for me. And you gotta say sometimes, he keeps right on, he keeps right on. Right on, come on, sing it with me. He keeps right on. Right on, he lifts you up today. Right on. Right on. Right on. Oh, he keeps right on doing great things for me. Hallelujah.
All praise be to the Heavenly Father. Say, keep right on, huh?
Right on.
How y'all doing today? Y'all doing all right? Oh, man, the energy coming from right here. I said, how y'all doing today? All praise be to the Most High, man. It's a honor and a privilege to be living, to see another Shabbat, to be in the presence of all the Most High's people, the children of Israel, everybody that's officially a part and everybody that's visiting, each and every one of y'all is truly always a blessing. Good to see y'all back. All praise be to the Most High. Good to see you back. Where your husband at? In the back, D. And good to see all of y'all. All praises. I see we got a visitor right there. A new person. How you doing? Good to have you here. Hope you enjoy. All praise be to the Most High. What up, Walt? Let's get it. Let's get it. All right, let's get into it. Part 2. I've been debating on whether or not we should do a part 3. I was going to try to keep it at part 2. But some folks is telling me I should be a little bit more thorough. So I'm going to go ahead and let the Spirit make the decision. What's up, Yaquatazai? Let's go to Jeremiah chapter 50. Let's get straight into it. Jeremiah chapter 50 and verse 17.
The book of Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 17.
So listen up.
Israel is a scattered sheep.
So stop right there. The Bible says that Israel is a scattered sheep. We talked about this word over and over and over last week. The word scattered, right? When you hear the word scattered, do you think of putting things in specific places neatly and in order? Anybody, is that your definition of scattered? Raise your hand if that's your definition. Now, when I see the definition of scatter, what I see is the total opposite of that. Everything kind of sent in every different direction, no order, just all random. If that's your definition of scatter, and that's what you know it to be, raise your hand. All right, so we all on the same page. Read it one more time.
Israel is a scattered sheep.
So the Bible says, as far as the nation of Israel, we are a scattered sheep. Scattered sheep. We are not sheep that are specifically put in various different places on the earth by tribe. We read last week where it talked about not only will we lose our name, but that we will lose our names. All right? Go ahead.
The lions have driven him away.
If you see sheep, and you can imagine this and see this in your head, you see sheep running from lions, in which direction do you think that they're going to go? Any direction that they got to try to get away. All over the place. Read.
First, the king of Assyria.
So now he's making specific references. He says, first the king of Assyria did what?
Devoured him.
Go ahead.
And last, this Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, hath broken his bones.
So now he makes mention to two different kings of two different nations, Assyria and Babylon. What's significant about those specific two nations and those specific two kings?
Northern and southern.
Huh? Who is he referencing? Say it out loud. Thank you, the northern and the southern kingdom. So he's letting it be known the entire nation of Israel, both kingdoms, have been completely scattered. Go from there. Go to the book of Ezekiel, chapter 37. I'm sorry, 34. And let's get verse 4 through 6.
Ezekiel chapter 34, verse 4. The disease have ye not strengthened, neither have ye healed that which was sick, neither have ye bound up that which was broken, neither have ye brought again that which was driven away.
Neither have ye brought again that which was driven away. We're talking about the nation of Israel. We were driven away as a people. We were driven away not just one time from one specific place. This is an event that happened continuously over and over and over. We were dispersed. We were scattered. This is what they call the diaspora. Raise your hand if you've ever heard that term. The diaspora. Some people will go as far as to call it the African diaspora. But it's not just about Africa or the Israelites that were in Africa. All over the earth, there was a diaspora of Israelites being scattered throughout the whole entire earth. Go ahead and read.
Neither have ye sought that which was lost, but with force and with cruelty have ye ruled them.
Bible says, neither have ye sought that which was lost. Go ahead, verse 5.
And they were scattered.
They were what?
Scattered.
They were what?
Scattered.
Scattered. We keep seeing the same word being used over and over again. Go ahead.
Because there is no shepherd.
And that's the reason why. Because there is no shepherd, meaning there is no leader. When our people are put in a situation where we don't have a leader, because there seems to be a misconception. When we have no leader, things always go bad for the nation of Israel. Historically, things have always gone bad for us. Another thing that happens when we don't have leaders, we start to stray away. We start to do our own thing. We start to get caught up in other nations. We get caught up in other people's plights and other people's doctrines. Go ahead.
And they became meat to all the beasts of the field when they were scattered.
And that's another thing. We fall prey to the various different ploys and plots and schemes of the other nations. That's why you over here and your people are celebrating Christmas today. Celebrating Halloween, getting ready to celebrate. It seemed like they turned it up this year with Halloween. Yeah, because wickedness is at an all-time high. They like, we got to do everything we can to get as many souls as we can. Right? Go ahead.
My sheep wandered through all the mountains.
Through all the mountains, we've been wandering, trying to figure out who we are. Some of us not giving a doggone about who we are. That's the thing. It's crazy because use this common sense. If, as a majority, us as a people lost the understanding, the knowledge that we were Israelites, what sense does it make for us to not know that we're Israelites, but we know exactly what tribe we come from? That's reasoning. What sense would that make? Furthermore, I'm going to show you through a whole lot of sources that it makes absolutely no sense for us to have that type of reasoning, thinking that we can identify ourselves by our fathers, because we already went through the aspect of genealogy last week. But go ahead, finish that off.
My sheep wandered through all the mountains and upon every high hill. Yea, my flock was scattered upon all the face of the earth.
Upon all the face of the earth. That's why you got Israelites everywhere. To literally put together a chart of literally just the Americas is a slap in the face. It's a slap in the face. When the Bible says over and over and over that Israel will be scattered throughout the entire earth, not only does it say it, if you know any little bit of history, it's easy to find it being said over and over and shown that literally Israelites have been scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. And now you got situations where you got Israelites waking up all over the earth. What makes the Americas that much more special than everybody else? Where we are not able to identify, or the same pattern doesn't happen with all of the other Israelites everywhere else, but just in the Americas. Levi's right here, Judah's right here, Issachar's right here, so on and so forth. Makes absolutely no sense at all. Finish that up.
And none did search or seek after them.
I think that was all I needed from that. Go from there. Go to Matthew chapter 9, verse 36. So when it says, and none did search or seek after them, what you got to understand is records weren't being kept more so than they were being destroyed. The objective was to destroy us as a people. Even before we get that, real quick, go get Psalms chapter 83. There's no way in the world you could possibly believe when you read this that they're going to say, you know what, we're going to destroy them, but we're going to let them all keep their tribal identity. Don't you think by default, if you were able to keep your tribal identity, you'd be able to figure out that you're an Israelite? And you would never, in essence, be detached from your heritage, be detached from who you are, your identity? Doesn't that make sense? But for some reason, that doesn't make sense to a lot of our people. Yep. Go ahead.
Psalms 83, verse 1. Keep not thou silent, O Yahweh. Hold not thy peace, and be not silent, O Yahweh. For lo, thy enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head.
Go ahead.
They have taken crafty counsel against thy people.
And this is talking, he's going to start naming some of the nations, but this is talking about the nations that literally took us into captivity. But one thing that you're going to have to understand, that there were other things already in play that allowed them to be able to take us into captivity. We weren't a feeble people. We've never been a feeble people. This is the most feeble we've ever been right now. And still right now we got a whole lot of spunk. You got more fighting going on in the household than you do on the war front. Not only the men was putting in work, the women was putting in work back then. We're not a easy people when it comes down to what we possess within us to come against if we're all together. The thing is, because we were so divided long before they decided to take us officially into captivity, that's what gave allowance for them to be able to do what they were able to do. And it was all designed by the Heavenly Father as a punishment because we refused to do right. But watch this, read.
They have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones.
Consulted against thy hidden ones. I got one particular source, I believe. I hope I got it in there when I show y'all my sources that talks about how the people knew that much. Some of the people, not all of them, some of the people knew that much that we were the Most High's hidden ones. Go ahead.
And they have said, come, let us cut them off from being a nation.
Let us cut them off from being a nation. Let us cut them off from being a nation. How do you cut somebody off from being a nation? I mean, we still here. We still living and breathing. But how do you cut somebody off from being a nation? They didn't kill us. We still living. We still breathing. Huh? But in what way? You're absolutely on the right path. Destroy their minds. Take them away from their laws. That's the number one thing. And from being taken away from our laws and our customs, what else were we taken away from? Our land. We were taken away from our land, but one very important thing. We were taken away from the knowledge of self. For you to lose knowledge of self, you got to understand, knowing your tribe is knowing your fathers. You can't just say, oh, I'm of the tribe of Reuben. All right, well, who are your fathers? I don't know, but I just know them. That doesn't make any sense. All throughout Scripture, and we showed that and proved that last week, anytime someone was able to say, I'm of the tribe of so-and-so, it was because they understood who their fathers were. This was my father, and this was his father, and so on and so forth. And we can trace that all the way back to the original 12 tribes, the original sons of Jacob. The way they destroyed us and put us in a situation where it says, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, we no longer know and can prove who we are through our fathers anymore. And that's the reason why it becomes not a problem. How many people, how many loved ones do you have where it's not a problem for them not to know their nationality? They're perfectly fine with being black, perfectly fine with being Mexican, perfectly fine with being Belizean, perfectly fine with being whatever, Filipino, you just name them, Israel everywhere. How you say Guyanian?
Guyana.
Is that right or wrong? I butchered it. I was close. How could that be? It's a situation where it says, look, to cut us off from being a nation, that means we no longer can identify ourselves. Like, we don't even look at ourselves as a unified people until we found out that we were Israelites. Prior to being Israelite, especially so-called black folks, you never looked at yourself as being a nation of people. And it's crazy because in our heads and some black folks' heads, we was like, well, man, the Mexicans, and but they don't look at themselves like that either. Because they've been going through the same oppression that so-called blacks been going through. Go ahead.
That the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance.
If the name of Israel be no more in remembrance, that's not just Israel, Yasharallah, but that's inclusive of all of the 12 tribes that came under that name. We no longer identify ourselves as this nation. It doesn't make sense for us to say all of a sudden when we find out that we're Israelites, right? Now I'm of this tribe because I come from this place. It just doesn't make sense. Go from there. A couple more before I go into my sources. Matthew chapter 9 and verse 36. Follow me real quick.
Matthew chapter 9, verse 36.
Uh-huh.
Well, But when he saw the multitude, he was moved with compassion on them, because they fainted and were
Now, hold on. This is Yahweh Shai. It says he was moved with compassion on them because they fainted. Were they physically fainted at that point? Were they like all just laying down in the streets like this? Is that what was going on? Huh? Absolutely not. When he said they were fainted, what did he mean? How are you fainted spiritually? Definitely weak-minded, but even more so when you actually fainted, you're in a state of consciousness or a state of unconsciousness. You're unconscious. When you faint, you become unconscious. So on a spiritual level, what are we saying? To be spiritually unconscious means what? You don't know who you are. You don't know where you at. Ain't that what happened when somebody first wake up after fainting? You trying to figure out if they've come to themselves. You ask them who they are. Sometimes they can't tell you who they are. They can't tell you what. You ever see somebody get knocked out? They get so knocked out that they stiffen up. Some of them, they be still trying to fight. They don't know what's going on. That's the state that he saw his people in. Fighting the referee. Fighting your own people. Because you so not senseless, you so fainted that you don't even know who the enemy is at this point. You don't know where you at. You're not spiritually conscious of who you are and what's going on in the world and how you got where you're at. You're not conscious of who your people are. So that's what he saw. What's crazy is what people don't understand. If there were already Israelites at that time that were fainted, they were already going to Israelites in various different places. Some Israelites finding out, knowing, okay, I'm Israel, but I don't know a lot of them didn't know who they were at that point. A lot of them didn't know their tribes at that point. How much more now? Go ahead and read.
And were scattered abroad.
They were already scattered at that point. How much more now? Read.
As sheep having no shepherd.
As sheep having no shepherd. That was one of the reasons why Yahweh Shai had to step in. He said, man, it's bad. I got to come and restore some order. I got to come and set some doctrines right, because it was a lot of foul doctrines that was being taught way back then. Read.
Then saith he unto his disciples, the harvest truly is plenteous, but the laborers are few.
Go ahead.
Pray ye therefore the Lord of the harvest, that he will send forth laborers into his harvest.
Matthew 26 and 31. Let's speed it up.
Matthew 26, verse 31. Then said Yahweh Shai unto them, all ye shall be offended because of me this night.
This is what Yahweh Shai was telling them. He said, Israel, a lot of y'all going to be offended by what I'm getting ready to say. Read.
For it is written, I will smite the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock shall be scattered abroad.
He said, I will smite the shepherd, and the sheep of my flock shall be scattered abroad. Meaning what? There was going to be more scattering. More. Now, we already read back in chapter 9 where he said that at that point, they were already scattered. Then he comes along in chapter 26, a time much later, and says, I'm going to do more scattering. More. Go to Lamentations chapter 5 and let's get 1 through 3.
The book of Lamentations chapter 5 verse 1. Remember, O Yahweh, what has come upon us. Consider and behold our reproach.
Go ahead.
Our inheritance is turned to strangers.
Now hold on. Our inheritance, excuse me. In here, I'm making up words. Our inheritance is turned to strangers. Here's the thing. Our actual land, where we were given specific allotments of land, which was our actual inheritance, which was a part of our actual heritage, given to us by our forefathers, right? That was given unto strangers. That's been taken away from us. Here we are, we're talking about Israelites now, specifically Israelites throughout the Americas. This was once Mexico. I mean, I'm just saying, think about this. If you know anything about history, this was Mexico. How can we be sure and how can we be confident that each tribe had their own allotments of land and all of them just so happened to live peacefully in harmony in those specific areas, and they're still there unto this day? Raise your hand if that makes any sense to you based upon maybe the little that you know about history. But just using basic reasoning, does that make any sense at all? Any? This was Mexico. And I'm born and raised here in California, so that makes me Mexican. That makes me the tribe of Issachar. Think about it. Then somebody, well, if they move from here, but then when their parents moved from, maybe they didn't know that their parents wasn't even from where you, come on now. Let's go. Hold on one second. I'm going to tell y'all right now. Go to, please go to my PowerPoint. It ain't really a PowerPoint, but all right. Look, this is the first book I'm going to go into. Black Indians, a hidden heritage. I'm going to try to be expedient. This is chapter 8 right here out of this book, and I don't have all of the page numbers, but if you really want them, I can give them to you. I got all these books. These are my own books. Chapter 8, their mixing is to be prevented. It says, in Latin America, Africans, now when you read an African in this book, it's talking about Israelites, all right? In Latin America, Africans had found safe places to hide and many Indians to aid them. Europeans were reluctant to seek out these remote hideouts. So what you're going to find is in Latin America, which they're talking about what? Central and South America. Because the difference between Central and South America and versus North America, in North America, there wasn't as much a jungle in North America. There's a whole lot of plains, a lot of flat land in North America. You got mountains, of course, but there's definitely not the same type of terrain that there is in Central and South America. You got vast jungles that you can hide in. And in those Americas, in Central and South America, what would happen was when those certain quote-unquote Africans, which were Israelites, got away and ran off, they would run off into places where only the Indians, which were Israelites as well, were living and kind of knew their way around. A lot of Esau decided not to chase them into some of those remote locations so they would get away. Now, how many different things do we have broken down on the chart that talks about Central and South America? And does any of it say anything about Southern Kingdom? Let's see how often this happened, because somebody might be like, that didn't happen often. In 1636, a Massachusetts Indian became the first North American to be legally enslaved, sentenced to work until he died. A decade later, Governor John Winthrop thought of the idea of seizing, some of these names is something else, so bear with me, Narragansett Indians to exchange for Africans. Around the same time, British commissioners meeting in New Haven also decided that it was fair to make slaves of Indians and exchange them for Africans. By 1661, slavery had become legal in the British colonies. Africans were preferred since they were thousands of miles from home. See, there's a big, and I'm not saying that there isn't some truth to some of these things, references, that people may have gotten from various different sources, but this is what makes sense. Because I've heard a lot of times, oh yeah, the African slaves, they were used because they were just way stronger than the Indian slaves. They was just dying off. According to this, it says Africans were preferred since they were thousands of miles from home. Indian slaves were able to flee to their armed brothers. Flee to their armed brothers and sisters, and then come roaring back armed and vengeful. This idea of keeping slaves distant from their homes and families was crucial to having them under strict control. British merchants took Indians enslaved on the mainland and shipped them to the West Indies. We already got some back and forth going on. So they said, okay, it don't work having Indians right here because they escape, and when they escape, they don't just get away. It's already bad for business that we losing slaves that we purchase, but then they come back and kill people. They come back with a vengeance. We got to stop doing that. This ain't going to work. Because they know the land better than we know the land. So right here, we just going to keep so-called black slaves. But what we can do with some of the ones that we got, we can send them over to the West Indies where they don't know that land. So now that makes it a problem because the West Indies, like on the 12 tribe chart, the West Indies belong to who? It's full of Benjamin, right? Jamaica's in the West Indies, right? And Levi, right? But then we're going to read another reference that talked about the Indians that were in Jamaica before the slaves even were brought into Jamaica. What happened to all of them? They just disappeared. So watch this. This was the only safe way to enslave Native Americans, for bondage was only secure when its victims had no one to turn to, no family or friends nearby. This is another reason why they sold slaves from this place way over to this place, shipped them down here, shipped them up there. Why? Anybody? To do what? Why? They wouldn't be familiar with the land. They wouldn't have anybody to turn to. They wouldn't have any backup. So off top, you got all these Israelites that were born in captivity not being with their parents. We've heard many accounts of slaves being sold from their parents before they even knew their parents. So do you think, let me ask you a question. Do you think they said, you know what, we can't just send them anywhere. Bill, we got to send them where his tribe is. Does that make sense? Let's send them where his tribe is, Bill.
And then, too, it depends on what island they sent them in the West Indies.
That's the whole point.
It wasn't just, the West Indies wasn't just one island. It's multiple islands.
And we're going to dig in, man. Reward notices in Colonial newspaper now told of African slaves who ran off with his Indian wife or had kin among the Indians or is part Indian and speaks their language good. So these were in newspapers. In slave huts and beyond the British settlements along the coast, African and Native American women and men shared their sorrows and hopes, their luck and courage. They did not always know where to run to, but they knew where to run from. Another page. Before Indians were eased out of the slave system, they had lived and married with African slaves and produced in their offspring a new class of Americans held in chains. When the slave codes talked of Indian slaves, it probably meant those black Indians. But in 1763, the British claimed Florida and Spain helped relocate these black Indian families to Cuba and to freedom. Relocate. Black Indians from Florida in Cuba. And around this time, British colonists in the southern colonies began introducing the practice of African slavery among neighboring Native Americans. They concentrated on the 5 nations. They're also called the 5 civilized tribes. I referenced them last week. The Cherokees, Chickasaws, Choctaws, Creeks, and Seminoles. As the largest body of Indians present on their borders, their aim was to make their slave property more secure by making Indians partners in the system. Indians who accepted slavery, they reasoned, would not take in fleeing runaways. Except for the Seminoles, the 5 nations began to accept the foreign idea of slavery. Even so, their idea of how it should work differed from the British practices. Listen up, because some people say, oh yeah, it was just the Seminoles. All the other tribes, man, they sold out. Man, they started taking slaves. That's wrong, right? Watch this. Quaker slave holder John Bartram, botanist to the King of England, visited some Indian owners in 1770. He found their slaves dressed better than the chief, married into the nation easily, and their children were free and considered in every respect equal to other members. After a visit to the Creeks, Bartram wrote, I saw in every town in the nation I visited captives, some extremely aged, who were free and in a good circumstances as their masters, in as good circumstances as their masters. And all slaves have their freedom when they marry, which is permitted and encouraged, and they and their offspring are in every way upon an equality with their conquerors. So what does this sound like? What were they doing? Our people said, you know what? Esau, so-called white man, thought he was slick. He said, you know what? We got to figure some things out. If we bring the natives in on this and give them a chance to own slaves, then they won't condemn what we doing. They won't be helping all of these blacks, all these Africans, which was Israelites, they brothers. So, you know, give them a chance to kind of live the quote-unquote American dream and to boss up. So the natives was like, okay, we'll do it. But they were smart because what they said was, okay, now once we got the slaves, we can treat the slaves how we want to treat them. And what did they do? They treated them like the brothers that they were to them. And they did what a lot of people don't understand, what this whole book is about. Two became one. All types of marriages. So-called Southern Kingdom taking on Northern Kingdom wives and Northern Kingdom taking on Southern Kingdom wives. So to make tribes distinctive, that would kind of get a little bit difficult when you got all of this mixing going on. Watch this. Hope I don't bore y'all. Somebody gonna get a kick out of all of this. But how did Native Americans view the way Europeans treated their enslaved Africans? Two European missionaries trying to convert the Delaware nation rejected, but with this report on the Delaware response to their plea. They rejoiced exceedingly at our happiness in thus being favored by the Great Spirit, and felt very grateful that we had condescended to remember our brethren. Listen to this, man. You got to pay attention. That we had condescended to remember our brethren in the wilderness. To remember our brethren in the wilderness. What do you think they referencing? I know I was getting excited about this. Somebody got to. But they could not help recollecting that we had a people among us whom, because they differed from us in color, we had made slaves of and made them suffer great hardships and led miserable lives. Now they could not see any reason, if a people being black entitled us then to deal with them, why a red color should not equally qualify the same treatment. Despite every European effort to keep one people of color from assisting the other, the two races began to blend on a vast scale. I'm going to read that one more time. Despite every European effort to keep one people of color from assisting the other, because who was they troubled about helping the other? They were troubled that the so-called red, which was the Indians, which was the Northern Kingdom, so to speak, generally speaking, they kept helping the Southern Kingdom, the blacks, the Africans, who were also Israelites, their brothers. The two races began to blend on a vast scale. What does that mean? Was it happening like a little bit here, a little bit there? On a vast scale means what?
It means many. Many were joining together and marrying and making families.
It was something that was happening all over the place all the time. Common practice. It was happening so much. Black Indians were apparent wherever if one bothered to look. Okay. Okay, hold that for me, because I'm going to get to the Seminoles. So watch this. This is chapter 10. What that say? Say it one more time for me. Blood so largely mingled. Their great fear was prompted by a peaceful community, here go another one of them names, of Pamunkey Indians, I did all right, many of whom were biracial or free black men and women, and these were Indians, Rather than clarify their dangerous actions or suspected conspiracies, whites, who we know are Edomites, just kept pointing to the fact that they were black Indians. Not one individual can be found among them whose grandfathers or grandmothers, one or more, is not of Negro blood. Read a petition to the legislator. Read a petition to the legislator. Everybody mixing left and right. Don't they kind of make you want to check yourself out? Because I think we in a much better place than where we was, but it was a time where some of us were still feeling that division. Don't it kind of make you look at things even more differently? Like I was on some dumb stuff. Like, how can you know? You got folks all the time having kids, and you got one dark one and one light one. I got them. This one goes on to have a gang of light kids, and this one goes on to have a gang of dark kids. Couple of generations down, you be like, nah, these is two different people. Go ahead, Ock.
No, I was going to say, right here it says, Pamunkey Indians, many of whom were biracial or free black men or women. So how were they considered biracial if they was the same race, huh?
Because this is about an understanding of the person, you know, that's authoring the book, doing the research, looking at the two. But it's fitting, it's cool, because in Scripture, literally we read it said that they would no longer be two different nations, but they would be one nation again. Ezekiel chapter 37. It was that bad, and it's been ingrained within our minds that we're different people. And we don't even realize how mixed up we are, but in the best way possible. We mix within our own nation. The real meaning of this furor was that it had become clear to any who cared to look that Native Americans east of the Mississippi had become a biracial people with a sprinkling of white blood. Our blood eat all that up anyway. We ain't worried about that. Just pray the white fathers throw them out. But they said, look, it had gotten to a point where you could no longer say, okay, this is this people, that's that people. It was like, you know what? They're totally mixed. It's that much. I see that in my family, right? That happened within our family, right, Dad? Now, y'all going to get a kick out of this one because we in L.A. Some of y'all going to feel proud. I think Yash going to feel proud about this one. The city of Los Angeles was founded in 1781 by 44 people, of whom only 2 were Europeans, and the rest African, Indian, or a mixture of the 3 races. Maria Rita Valdez, a granddaughter of one black founder, owned a section of the land called Beverly Hills. Dang, Beverly Hills belonged to us first. Francisco Reyes, another founder, owned the San Fernando Valley. In the 1790s, he sold it and became mayor of Los Angeles. Didn't they try to say Villaragosa was the first? You ever heard of the Trail of Tears? For white U.S. citizens in the eastern states, problems presented by Native Americans were solved in a single dramatic stroke by the Indian Removal Act of 1830. It provided for the mass deportation of the 5 nations from their huge fertile homelands in the southeast. Some 60,000 red and black men and women were eventually deposited on lands in Arkansas and Oklahoma that whites considered uninhabitable. Oh, your land, it's uninhabitable. You guys got to go. I'm going to drop down. It says, for Cherokees, it was a murderous trail of tears. Cherokee men, women, and children, including 1,600 black Cherokees, were prodded westward in midwinter by federal, I know how to pronounce that word. I think it's bayonets. Bayonets. I wasn't even close. But I've seen that word before. Bayonets. About 10,000 Cherokees survived. But President Van Buren assured Congress that their expulsion had the happiest effects. The Cherokees have immigrated without apparent reluctance. Here's another book, Lost Tribes and Promised Lands. Dealing with good old Columbus. Columbus certainly knew Zacutos, and Zacuto was another person who did a lot of research. He knew Zacuto's work in astronomy and made use of it. Indeed, it was to save the discoverer's life one night in 1504 when he pacified a group of hostile Indians in Jamaica. Hold on. 1504, when he pacified a group of hostile Indians in where? In Jamaica. Where the Indians go in Jamaica? Sister Sashi, where the Indians in Jamaica go? She said, "You looking at us." But all of Jamaica's Benjamin. That don't make sense. I don't think Benjamin had came over by that time. And then they made a specific reference that there were indigenous people, so-called, there. And that's who they're referencing. By using Zacuto's, this is a piece of his work, Almanac Perpetuum, to predict successfully an eclipse of the moon. Now watch this. Zacuto's historical work, the Sefer Yuhasin, which means Book of Genealogies, begun immediately after the completion of the Almanac Perpetuum, was also meant at first to be an astronomical treatise of sorts. Israel is exemplified by stars. He wrote of the great men of the Jewish past in his preface, who shine like the splendor of the firmament. Now, where do you think these references come from? Because he's saying something that sounds familiar. Israel is exemplified by stars. Where at? In the Bible. He says, who shine like the splendor of the firmament, making reference to the same thing, right? And what follows at first is a veritable description of the heavens, a series of brief biographies, thing tripping, hold on. Come on now. Esau be listening in, huh? Just coming out of nowhere. Where did I leave off? Brief biographies from Adam, Noah, and the patriarchs all the way through to Judah, Levi, Moses, these names. Maimonides, and the great rabbis of medieval northern Europe. But this book was written through a period of some 25 years, during which its author experienced disasters that were bound to shake up the serene vault of his spirit and transform his sense of history. An abrupt change in his character occurs in a passage dealing with the expulsion of the Jews from France in 1306, which breaks into the following digression. So that's another thing. There were all of these various different expulsions. And an expulsion is when a people are displaced. They're told, you got to go. They've been living in wherever it is that they've been living. In this case, it was France. And the whole community of Israelites, they told them, look, y'all got to go. You got to go to another country. You're no longer welcome here in France. Now I'm going to have to zoom this one in. And so, too, because of our sins, we saw with our own eyes the expulsions from Spain, Sicily, and Sardinia in 1492, and in 1497 from Portugal. This is a little bit of history. You know, these were some of the places where literally Israelites were told, you can no longer be in this country. When they were kicked out of Spain, if you know anything about Spain, it's right next to Portugal. Both of them make up what's called the Iberian Peninsula. So they left Spain in 1492, and they just went straight across the border to Portugal. They were good there. But once they had to leave Portugal, it became a problem. Now you got to get off the whole peninsula, right? It says, for from France, we had come to Spain. So after they got kicked out of France, a lot of them went to Spain, where we had our enemies on one side and the sea on the other. But flight was possible from France, from which my great-grandfather came. So hold on, let's take a moment right there. Got kicked out of France in, what did it say, 1306. So roughly around 1306, all the way to 1492, that's about approximately how long? Almost 200 years. That many of them was in Spain. But they were originally from where? They came from France. There's a lot of Israelites going from here to there, right? So that the descendants of my grandfather, Abraham Zacuto, were in Spain, and I was born here into that good name. And all of them withstood the Castilian persecutions. Castile was a kingdom within Spain. A lot of people don't know that. The language that you call today Spanish is not the only Spanish language. By definition, it's not called Spanish at all. It is Castilian because it's the language of the people of Castile, which were in Spain, and the Castilian people who were of the Moorish Empire, a Moorish kingdom, happened to be ruling at the time, and their language became more prevalent because they were the conquerors. They were the ruling class. So even the language that you call today Spanish is not, if you go to Spain, they'll look at you funny. Like, that's not Spanish. There's all types of other Spanish languages. So it says, and all of them withstood the Castilian persecutions of 1391 and remained steadfast in the faith of the Holy One. Blessed be he and his Torah. So a lot of stuff going on here. Let me see if it's anything else I want here. Hold on. I don't necessarily need that. All right, now I do want this. Dealing with Montecinos. Because a lot of people, they use the reference of when Montecinos, which I'm going to deal with in a second. And this is going into it. In September 1644, a Portuguese Marano, and the term Marano, a lot of people misconstrue what the term Marano actually means too. It's an association usually with Jews, Israelites that convert to Christianity at that time. Named Antonio de Montecinos, arrived in Amsterdam after having lived for some years in South America, and proceeded to tell the leaders of the recently established Jewish community there a story that caused them to think of him as a latter-day El Dan the Danite. Danite meaning he was from the tribe of Dan. That's where he said he was from. 2.5 years before, he told them while traveling in the wild mountains of, how do you pronounce that, Ash? Quito. How you say? Quito. Quito. So he was in the wild mountains of Quito. Now here's the thing. I don't know how, and I got to listen to the way Jake's trying to teach this, because this is one of the #1 references that Jake's go to. If y'all been on Clubhouse, you probably didn't heard this reference. You'll know it when I get to the second part of it. About, you know, they seen him and they was like, oh, our brother's Joseph is on the other tribe. It's like the, but here's the thing. Where's Quito? Where at in South America? It's in Peru? Okay, shoot, I thought it was Peru, you sure? Let me look that up. I looked it up earlier. I'm going to take your word for it, but look it up real quick. Quito, where's Quito? Peru. Ecuador, that's where it's, which is close to Peru, but yeah. Ecuador, that's what it is. So now, this is in Ecuador, right? But how do they change this from Ecuador to Florida? I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I wish, for time's sake, because it's a lot of stuff I got to get through. Montecinos ended up being jailed. One of the things he was saying, he was going through his little thing, and he was like, blah, 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 I'm glad. And then he had to think about it. He said, but these are God's chosen people. But he went to jail. He said in jail, he said, if I get out of here, man, I want to give back a Jake that he met named Francisco, right? An Indian that he met. And so he, sure enough, when he got out, he hooked up with Francisco. So Francisco hooked him up with some people that could give him some information. So this is what was said. It says here, Francisco announced, is where my brothers will be seen. Waving a banner high in the air, the Indian guide soon was greeted by a puff of smoke far beyond the other bank of the river. In response to his signal, the two men waited. Eventually, a canoe appeared, bearing 3 men and a woman, all of them Indians, to the place where Francisco and Montecinos were standing at the water's edge. So they were in the same place that they once were at, all right? It says the woman got off and spoke to Francisco in an Indian tongue that Montecinos could not understand, although he could perceive that he was being identified in the conversation. She then turned to her male companions to explain the situation. Upon hearing her words, they rose, went over to Montecinos, and to his utter astonishment said, Shema Yisrael Adonai Elohinu Adonai Ehad, which we say Shema Yasha'Allah Yahweh Allahai Yahweh Akkad, right? Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, or is one. They had recited in Hebrew the fundamental creed of Judaism. All right, now watch this. Go drop down. It says, they told him that they were themselves of the tribe of who? Now, this is in Ecuador. How did we go from Ecuador to Florida? They had to make it fit, I guess. Because it says nothing about, and I read the whole thing. I can give you the page in the book. This is talking about Ecuador. not Florida. Then they said, and that the tribe of Joseph lived on an island nearby. Now that tribe is supposed to be where? I think Cuba, right? And Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico. Menashe and Cuba. Them islands supposed to be nearby Ecuador. Are they nearby Ecuador? So what were they talking about?
This is the hook.
It does not compute. Doesn't make sense. Here's another book called The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews. It says, now listen up, in Colonial, New York, these New York Jews, Jews constituted a major segment of the mercantile population and were an important part of colonial trade, a fact often overlooked by historians. I wonder why this part is overlooked. These are some of the most powerful bootleg Jews in the world. That's why it's overlooked. Complains Hershkowitz. They were engaged in money lending, brokering, and banking from the earliest colonial age. Slave dealing, then the most profitable of ventures, was financed through the New York banking firms. And though few records exist, because they got rid of them or they got them hiding somewhere, the critical capital provided by these firms, capital that launched the African expeditions, cannot be understated. The trade of the Jewish merchants was primarily in agricultural products exchanged for rum, slaves, and manufactured goods. One recorded cargo included coconuts, coral, tobacco, turpentine, sturgeon, wine, rum, 2 Negro boys, and 1 mulatto slave. So this is one of the only few ones that they can find. Of course, they were selling a whole lot more than just 3 slaves. The Jews traded with their co-religious in Curaçao, I believe, Suriname, St. Thomas, Barbados, Madeira, and Jamaica, referred to as the principal trading ports for New York outside of England. So what did we just read here? Amongst all of the things that were being traded was slaves. Slaves were literally being traded back and forth from New York to places like Jamaica. So easily those slaves that were in quote unquote North America, New York, supposed to be what tribe? Judah, right? So it was Judah that was frequently, and it says, look, where was that at? It said, cannot be understated, meaning it was a whole lot, right? Many Judites was being sent to places like Suriname, St. Thomas, Barbados, Jamaica. And many of those that came from these various different places was being brought to New York. How do we know the difference now? Somebody told us, I guess. How do we know the difference? Just tell me if I'm boring you and tell me if what I'm saying makes no sense. Because I don't even have to really do too much commentary. Just reading this alone is enough. It makes no sense at all. Here's another one, Babylon and Timbuktu. In the 9th century, a black African Hebrew arrived in the city of Kairouan in Algeria. In this city was one of the famous Talmudic schools. The name of this Hebrew was Eldan the Danite. We just talked about him a minute ago. He told an incredible story of a Hebrew empire south of the Sahara in the western Sudan. According to Eldan the Danite, the Hebrews in the interior of Africa spoke a Phoenician Hebraic language mixed with Arabic. See, here's the thing. Even here in America, they were speaking all different types of dialects of Hebrew. What's that stone that's found? The Los Lunas stone. On that stone, was that the Los Lunas? It's two of them that I'm thinking about. It's the big one, and then it's the little one. One of them is the Los Lunas. Is that the big one or the little one? That's the big one, right? And then it was a smaller one too. For a long time, they didn't know what it was saying, and then it was just upside down. Huh? Okay, yeah. So here's the thing. Not only in the way these languages were being spoken, but another thing that happened often, that's just like a lot of people are not educated in regards to these languages. There's not just one Greek language. There wasn't just one Hebrew language. There were different variations upon different places that you went to and different kingdoms that came about and mixed a little bit of this with a little bit of that and had this influence. So right here it says Phoenician Hebraic language mixed with Arabic. So even there's a Greek called Koine Greek that was influenced by the Hebrew language. That was found here in the Americas amongst the Indians, the so-called natives' writings, where they had Koine Greek characters along with Hebrew characters. So watch this, and it said mixed with Arabic. They had a religion which had come down from Moses and a Hebrew emperor. It was believed that this emperor was named Tautan or Balatan. Eldad said that the people of this tribe had fled from the kingdom of Israel. Listen up. After Sennacherib, from Assyria. The Assyrian had subdued it, and that other Israelite tribes such as Naphtali, Gad, and Asher were in the land from which he came. Where did he come from? What was he talking about? He says Sudan. Where's Sudan at? So although a whole lot of Israel, probably the majority of Israel, came over into the Americas, some of them actually went in other places because that's what the diaspora is. That's what the scattering is. So you got Northern Kingdom that was still in Africa. And we also found that in scriptures as well. I think in Chronicles is a reference, Chronicle of, I think, 2 Chronicles chapter 30. With Hezekiah situation in the, I think in Acts, where it shows the same thing, that there were still Northern Kingdom Israelites that were still on that side of the world. And here you got another reference right here. And it's crazy, it's funny because how could we be in a situation where we wouldn't believe that tribes could intermingle when you even had whole languages being intermingled? Whole different nations of people being intermingled. At that time, you did have some people that said, hey, you know what? My fathers are of so-and-so, but we're far removed from that at this point. You ain't going to be able to look me in the eye and say, I'm from the tribe of so-and-so, and you don't know who your fathers are. It's not working. It says, it is now an established fact, now listen up, that Ghana was a black Hebrew state, and at its juncture, I shall continue my writings concerning the Zah dynasty of Ghana. It says, Zakasi or Kosoi, up to this time, all the kings of Ghana professed the Hebrew religion. However, in this year, a radical transformation occurred. Zakasi accepted Islam. So one of the things, and I don't think I put it all in here because it was just too much. Ghana itself was known and established as a Hebrew country, a Hebrew kingdom. they were known to, that's why we were able to go in there after doing so much research and be like, dang, we about to go see some Israelites. Because there's history there in regards to these people being predominantly Hebrew. They got all types of things still within their culture that point to them being Israelites. In addition to that, even the term Ghana itself, man, it actually, the country originally had a different name. Ghana comes from one of the names that was used to call their kings, and I think it means like war chief. But Ghana, they were Hebrew, and they still are Hebrew by blood, but they began to take on Islam. And that's when a lot of things begin to change. Because what you're going to understand also is this, and, you know, like I said, this will be a different lesson for a different day. There was a time where people were literally just being persecuted according to their religious beliefs. And religion meaning their practices, what they practice. Not according to the color of their skin. In spite of the fact that the kings of Ghana profess Islam, many of the inhabitants remain Jews. I don't think I need that at the bottom. Because of the exploits of Sani Ali, the Zah dynasty of Gal acquired a new appellation. The dynasty after Sani Ali the first is called the Soni or the Shai dynasty. There were about 17 or 18 Islamic Hebrew kings in this dynasty. Then drop down below that, it says in the year 1464, the 16th Zah prince Sani Ali took the leadership of Gal and began to build a new empire. Sani Ali attacked many of the neighboring tribes, including the city of Timbuktu, and brought them under his, and that's another one that's hard to pronounce, but that's an important word. Get it, look it up in the dictionary real quick. Hegemony. I believe it's hegemony. Tell me what that word means.
It's hegemony, leadership or dominance, especially by one country or social group over others.
So essentially, he took all of these different peoples, there was different tribes, and said, all of y'all going to be one, and you're going to be one under me. That sound familiar? Is not that the same thing that was talked about in the Maccabees when they said, y'all no longer going to call yourselves Jews, you're going to call yourself Antiochians. How many times has that happened to our people? You called yourself American and U.S. citizen for so long, and you don't know who you are. So you literally telling me somebody can come up to you and say, hey, you from the tribe of so. That's ridiculous. We're a people, that's the thing, even in Ghana, which we learned in Ghana. We went to Ghana and we learned from the people in Ghana, and I got a book that I'm going to show you in a second. I got a reference from there. Long before the transatlantic slave trade even happened, there was already slavery going on in Ghana amongst Israelites. Israelites in treachery, literally enslaving other Israelites. It was already tribal. As a matter of fact, in the book Black Indians, because I didn't have time to go into that, they was already gang banging. You had a dude called Cherokee Bill who was really known. He was like the real Billy the Kid, because Billy the Kid, they be putting the extras on him and, romanticize his life, put all of these different actors and stuff up to talk about he was the baddest thing in the West. You had a whole lot of bad Israelites back in the days, and they belonged to gangs way back then. We've been tribal. Says not only were the people of Africa and Asia black in ancient times, but also the European lands of the Mediterranean, meaning it was people of color all over. We be sitting up here trying to separate and talk about not this land. Israel was all over, because that's what we really talking about. We really ain't talking about no other people. We talking about Israelites being literally everywhere. At this time in the land of Spain, the black Jews were persecuted, and many had fled to Morocco for refuge. As a result of this persecution, the Jews of Morocco and the Moors planned to invade Spain with the assistance of Spanish Jews. In the meantime, the plot was uncovered, and the Jews of Spain suffered for their intentions. Early in the 8th century, the Mohammedans from Morocco, united with the black Jews, made what we call an amphibious landing at Gibraltar. This invasion was successful. So, this is just another reference to talk about all of the different things that was going on. One of the things that you got to understand, the reason why the Jews and the Moors got together, because the Moors were of the stock of Israel. Many of them were of the stock of Israel. These were the same people. So when they got kicked out, they didn't just say, okay, all of the Jews got to go. The Moors got kicked out as well. Let me see. The first one to set foot on the soil of Spain was General Tarif, a Jew of the tribe of Simeon. So yeah, you had some who knew who they were at that time, after whom the island of Tarifa, opposite Tangiers, was named. However, the Rock of Gibraltar, previously known as the Pillars of Hercules, received this new name from the great Moorish conqueror Jabal et Tariq, which means the mountain of Tariq. Here's another excerpt out of this same book. Let me see if it's something I want to get. I mainly want to get what's at the bottom. Professor Alan H. Godby says that the reign of the last Jewish king of Ghana terminated in 1492. In order to satisfy Queen Isabella of Spain, King Manuel of Portugal promulgated a royal decree expelling the Jews and Moors from his country in 1496. The Jews and Moors, because they were one people. Yeah, they had different beliefs, but these were the same people. The Jews, because at that time things changed. It wasn't about what you believe and what you practice. Esau was taking over at that point. You read up at the top, Isabella, who was an Edomite, she had got with the king of Argon. They married, and they started making power moves. And this was Esau. We coming out of the Dark Age. Now we going into the time of the Renaissance. All right. The Jews who were there, expelled from Spain and Portugal, were scattered throughout the Mediterranean coast. I'm going to have a hard time reading this. Hold on. It is estimated that over 100,000 Jews departed from Spain and Portugal during the persecutions and the expulsion. Some of these Jews went to Northern Europe, Italy, and Turkey. So when these bootleg Jews play the game talking about, oh, we Jews, we coming back, this is where they get that from. They try to be slick and say, oh, well, we Jews out of where they usually be saying they come from, out of Poland and all these, because they know that Israel's by prophecy scattered in all these different places. But even like the Scottish people who claim like, and the people of Ireland who claim like they the baddest people in the world, and they went into captivity, they really talking about the glory of our people and the things that we went through and the great things we did. The great warriors that we are, the Celtic warriors that Israelites were. That's what they be talking about. And they sit up here, they stole your identity. Some of these Jews went to the Northern Europe, Italy, and Turkey, but most of them went to Muslim countries of the North and Western Africa. So the Israelites, they weren't going to one place. They were going to all types of different places. They weren't saying, as a tribe, we're going to go to this country. As a tribe, we're going to go to that country. They were doing the same thing that Israelites today do. You know what, me and my family, I think we'll do better going to this country. I don't know where y'all going, but we going here. Well, I don't think that's a good idea. We're going to go where we think is safe. We're going to go down into Africa. It was that simple. These black Jews would naturally go to African countries most of all because of less persecution, and they could disguise themselves easily amongst blacks. Here's a book that we actually got from Ghana. It says, as has already been pointed out, slavery was a worldwide institution. Slavery in Africa did not begin with the Atlantic slave trade. And in Ghana, the institution predated contact with the Europeans. There were 6 major uses to which slaves were put from the 15th to the 19th century. First, slaves constituted a reservoir of labor for agriculture, trade, and industry. Second, slaves were used to the administrative sectors of the state. Third, some slaves served in the military. 4, slaves performed domestic chores in the palaces of chiefs, at shrines, and in individual households. 5, a special category of slaves was available for sacrifice in accordance with traditional beliefs and practices. 6, personal slaves satisfied the private desires of their owners. Yeah. The effects of the Atlantic slave trade on the indigenous slave trade. The institutionalization of the Atlantic slave trade in Ghana from the middle of the 17th century AD onwards did not supersede the indigenous slave trade. The two systems existed side by side and sustained each other. So when we went there, what did we hear from them? And they said it in shame. They said, man, we was treacherous to each other. We was selling each other. A lot of times it wasn't Ham. It was Ham sometimes, but a lot of times it was Israel selling Israel. They was into it. And everybody there, they'll tell you what tribe they from. Did they ever say any of the tribes of Israel? You just went there a third time. What tribes do they say they from?
They don't say what tribe they are. They just say they're Israelites.
The ones that we dealing with now, they know they're Israelites. But before they know that they're Israelites, they'll always tell you the tribe they from. There's different tribes within the Ashanti, right?
Yeah, they got Ashanti,
Ga.
They got Igbo. They also got Igbo over there too.
They got Igbo over there.
Yeah, they got they have many tribes over there, not just Ashanti only, but.
But do they ever say any of the tribes of Israel before they? No, they don't.
No.
Why?
Simple fact, they don't know.
They don't know. They've been detached from that.
I just heard one time from one of the brothers saying that Ghanaians there from the tribe of Judah, but that's impossible.
He probably said that because he probably hear that from a lot of other folks. If anything, somebody may be saying that over there because they did have a kingdom of Judah over there at one point. Other than that, like today, who's able to say what tribe they're from? You'd be hard-pressed to find somebody who can give you concrete information. This is the last book right here, man. I hope I didn't book y'all to death. I thank some of y'all for bearing with us because I know this for some of y'all, you know, but for some of us, I know you're like, ooh, it's a lot. So I appreciate y'all for bearing with us. It's going back to Columbus. I kind of probably should have pushed this first because we kind of transitioned backwards. Among those who wondered whether Columbus was the first person to discover the New World was the man Columbus. He recorded in his journal a visit with King Juan of Portugal, who told him before his departure that he, the king, had evidence of trade between Africa and South America in tobacco, cotton, shell money, and breadroot for a considerable time in the unknowable past. When you go into this book, it really goes into it. It's a wonderful book. They knew that Israel from over there had been coming over here and dealing with the Israelites that were over here in the Americas. They had it documented. And there were Israelites that had decided to relocate from over there to over here. So you got to be careful not to listen to your oppressor and think that like we were already dealing with one another. That's why Yahweh Shah made the reference when he said he's going to go where nobody. He already knew where the Israelites was at. It was in Scripture. The same way it talks about how Columbus knew. Talks about how Columbus kept the book of Ezra with him. And he always talked about his book of prophecies and talked about, I mean, the book goes into a lot. All of these books go into a lot more than what I showed today. They called us the, man, they made some references I can't think of right now. But they knew exactly that it was the children of Israel that was over here. I want to read that bottom part. It says, as he traveled this course, two things impressed him. The unquestionable Negro presence and the apparent influence of Christianity. Why? Is he talking about the Christianity of today? Nah. Our people were still doing a lot of things that they had been doing in their past when they knew that they were Israel at that time. They still held certain customs, right? Some of them. Because then there's also references that talk about these people were peaceable and this is how they acted. These people were wild and warlike. You had more than people saying I'm gonna stick to my tribe. People started forming tribes when you read this. Well, I'm with them. They on some savage stuff. That's what I'm on. Well, you know what? We want to live in peace. They went over here to try to live in peace. People that were warlike would come over here and try to destroy their peace. And it was all type of tribalism going on all throughout what they call Mesoamerica and pre-Columbian America. I think that's it, man. Go. You can take it off of there. Put it back on me. Let's go real quick. Go to Genesis chapter 49:1.
The book of Genesis, chapter 49, and verse 1.
Yep.
And Jacob called unto his sons and said, gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days.
So off top, when people, they read this and they see in the last days, they don't necessarily have the best perspective on exactly what that means. Hold that real quick. Go to Hebrews chapter 1, and let's get verses 1 through 2.
Hebrews chapter 1, verse 1. Oh, here we go. And Yahweh, who at sundry times and diverse manners spake in times past unto fathers by the prophets.
So hold on. Read that one more time. Slow it down a little bit. Hebrews,
Most High.
Hebrews chapter 1, verse 1 and 2.
Verse 1. Hebrews chapter 1, verse 1. The Most High, who at sundry times.
At what?
At sundry times.
Sundry times. Right? Go ahead.
And in diverse manners spake in times past unto the fathers by the prophets.
Go ahead.
Having these last days spoken unto us by his Son.
So hold on. Have in these last days. So he was referencing that moment as the last days. So when you see the words last days, it does not mean the very last couple of days of our existence before the kingdom to come comes. It just means at a later time. That's all it means. All right? Latter times. That's it. So let's go back and read it in context.
Genesis 49 and 1.
Uh-huh.
And Jacob called unto his sons and said, gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days.
In the last days, meaning in the latter days, meaning sometime in the future. All right? Go ahead.
Gather yourselves together, and hear, ye sons of Jacob, and hearken unto Israel your father.
Go ahead.
Reuben, thou art my firstborn.
So Reuben is the firstborn. All right? Go ahead.
My might and the beginning of my strength.
Uh-huh.
The excellency of dignity.
So now, he says he's his might and the beginning of his strength. Why? Is it something that we really got to look into to understand this, or is it really simple? It's quite simple. Reuben is his firstborn son. According to the law, it tells you that that firstborn is the beginning of your strength. He's the one that gets a double inheritance. He's the one that primarily carries your name on. All right? That's all it's talking about. But when it talks about, go ahead and read.
And the excellency of power.
The excellency of dignity and the excellency of power. A lot of people have defaulted and said, this is what's said, the Seminole Indians are the Reubenites. The Seminole Indians are Indians that happen to be in the Florida area, right? And all of this history, which we touched on last week, which talked about the 5 civilized tribes, and of the 5 civilized tribes, Reuben is the only one that didn't sign any treaties, which was incorrect. Reuben did eventually, not Reuben. The Seminoles did eventually sign treaties. Now, here's the thing. We showed, according to the references that they try to use to say, oh, this is Reuben, these were Israelites that were way in Ecuador. So we can't equate the two. In addition to that, this reference right here is not necessarily talking about what they say it's talking about, but go to Genesis chapter 37 and 21 and 22.
Also, before you get that, the Seminole Indians were a conglomerate of all the tribes. It wasn't just one tribe. It was multiple tribes together at that time.
God. They were a melting pot of tribes as well as so-called African slaves, which are actually Israelites. So for you to even say, oh, you know, this is a particular tribe, it doesn't make any sense. It couldn't be accurate because it's a known fact that the Seminole Indians began later to be called the Seminole Indians because they had, like he said, a number of different tribes that came together to be called one particular tribe. 37 and let's get verse 21 and 22.
Genesis chapter 37, verse 21. And Reuben heard it, and he delivered him out of their hands and said.
So hold on. This is talking about his brother, Joseph. The story was, you know, Joseph was favored by Jacob, their father. And the brothers felt some type of way about that. And Joseph was given this beautiful coat. Joseph also had a dream and gave forth a prophecy, a vision of something that was given to him by the Heavenly Father. And they didn't appreciate the interpretation of the dream. So they decided that they were going to essentially put their brother to death. Reuben was the only one, him being the oldest, but he had compassion on his brother. He said, nah, y'all can't do that. I'm not going to allow you guys to put him to death. You guys can put him in this pit and let him learn his lesson. But that's as far as it's going to go. You're not putting him to death. So, you know, after that, Reuben left off, and then they decided that they weren't going to kill him. But what they did do, they sold him off into slavery. But watch this, read.
And Reuben heard it, and he delivered him out of their hands and said, let us not kill him. And Reuben said unto them, shed no blood, but cast him into this pit that is in the wilderness, and lay no hand upon him, that he might rid him out of their hands, to deliver him to his father again.
So Reuben, he said, not only, you know, we can teach him a lesson, but y'all don't lay a hand on him. We're going to make sure that he's alive and we can deliver him back to our father. Just teach him a lesson. That's what it's talking about when it says, go ahead, go back to verse 3, the latter part of verse 3 in chapter 49.
Genesis 49:3. The excellency of dignity and the excellency of power.
So the excellency of dignity and the excellency of power. Also go to 1 Chronicles chapter 5 and verse 18.
First Chronicles chapter 5, verse 18. The sons of Reuben and the Gadites and half the tribe of Manasseh, of valiant men, men able to bear buckler and sword, and to shoot with bow, and skillful in war, were 440,703 score that went out to the war.
So this is also what it's referencing right here, all right? People think all of a sudden because you say something about a bow and arrow like it's exclusive to Native Americans. But now that you know a little bit of something, where else were they shooting bow and arrows at? They were shooting bow and arrows and having spears all throughout Africa, right? Because it was Israelites in Africa as well. I also had other references from those books that I didn't get a chance to put up because it was just too much. But it talked about the fact that they identified that there were certain, the spears and the arrowheads that were being given to the natives were of an African alloy. And it was being brought over here by their brothers that was coming from over on that side of the world. Go ahead. Verse 4. Yeah, 49 and verse 4.
Verse 4. Unstable as water, thou shalt not excel.
So now, what is this talking about? Unstable as water, thou shalt not excel. Go to 1 Chronicles chapter 5, verse 1 and 2.
First Chronicles chapter 5, verse 1. Now the sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, for he was the firstborn, but for as much as he defiled his father's bed,
What did he do?
He defiled his father's bed.
He laid with his father's wife, one of his father's wives. Go ahead.
His birthright was given unto the son of Joseph.
So he was the firstborn. He was supposed to have the birthright. And because he did what he did, the birthright was snatched from him, and it was given unto Joseph. And it went from Joseph to one of his sons, which happened to be Ephraim. All right? Joseph was given a double portion, which fell upon Ephraim and Manasseh, but Ephraim was made the head, and he became the head tribe over the northern kingdom. Is that all of that?
The sons of Joseph, the son of Israel, and the genealogy is not to be reckoned after the birthright.
So the Bible says the genealogy is not to be reckoned after the birthright. So it became a situation where it was no longer Reuben that was going to be the one that would be the head of the tribes. All right? Judah actually became the head of all the tribes, and then Ephraim was a secondary leader. Joseph was given the double portion, and Judah was actually given the actual leadership position. Read.
You wanted 2?
Verse 2.
Verse 2. For Judah prevailed above his brethren, and of him came the chief ruler. But the birthright was Joseph's.
So again, Judah was given rulership. He became the lead. Joseph was given a double portion, all right? And that's why 2 of his sons are known as 2 of the tribes of Israel, which is Ephraim and Manasseh. Let's go back.
Genesis 49 and 4.
Go ahead.
Unstable as water, thou shalt not excel, because thou wentest up to thy father's bed, then defouledest thou it. He went up to my couch.
So this is what we're going to do. Next week will be the final final lesson on this, and we'll go through all of the proper understanding of Genesis 49 and Deuteronomy 33, which tells you exactly what those 2, breakdowns are talking about. It's not talking about a 12-tribe sign or chart. And that'll conclude this week. Next week will be that. It'll be straight out of the Bible. All praise be to the Heavenly Father. Hope you got something out of it. All right. What up, Bosh?